David Huebner served as the US ambassador to New Zealand from 2009 to 2014, and he joins us now. Ambassador, thank you so much for joining us on the show. You've made your views very clear on social media. You said you're heartbroken, but your response to what we've seen here, particularly in this city and in this country?
Well, Julia, thank you for having me. Yes, yesterday was a horrific day for me. One of the great blessings of my life was being able to spend 5 years in a wonderful country surrounded by wonderful people. And to see this happen, particularly in a city like Christchurch, is heartbreaking.
David, what policy response do we need to see? Because we've had this discussion numerous times throughout the day that we are very quick to condemn terrorism that comes from religious extremists. But when we're talking about rhetoric, language, this kind of violence that's justified by fear of immigration, by fear of the Muslim, the Islamic community, greater action needs to be taken. Would you agree with that?
I would, but I would suggest that political action is very difficult. What we need is moral action. We need to hold not only ourselves, but those around us to a higher standard. There is so much hypocrisy in the debate about such issues. I was thinking last night that when a Mexican migrant commits a crime, we need to build a wall. When a Muslim commits a crime, people want to ban them from the country. But when a straight white nationalist commits a crime, too many people point and say, it was just him. We need to really think about how we react to these things, and I think that debate has to start in schools and houses of worship and around the dinner table, not in the halls of a parliament.
You're pointing the finger there to some degree at the President of the United States, his rhetoric regarding building a wall.
Oh, absolutely. There are many people who will say, don't politicize, and I agree with that. People should not use tragedy to score political points. But I also think that those who would say we should never talk in the moment about cause, effect, and prevention are not really thinking of the interests of the victims of a tragedy. They're looking to defer indefinitely a very necessary conversation about how we present and how we evaluate our own actions and how our actions and our words might influence others, including people with disturbed minds.
I agree with you about the political point scoring. We need to understand how connected hate, rhetoric, language then becomes something like this, which is so extreme. And I think we have to separate these two things. David, what should be the takeaway? What should be the takeaway of something so tragic as we've seen in the last 12 hours in New Zealand?
Well, I think there are a few takeaways. Just to mention two, we need to be sensitive to the fact that this can happen anywhere. In a global environment with global media and free travel, there is no community immune from this. And number two, we need to really stop and think about the messages we convey and about those we consider us and those we consider them. And that self-reflection is very difficult, but it's at the core of the solution here. And if I may, I'll give you an example. One of the members of the American Congress tweeted something which I think he probably believed was supportive. But what he said was, there is no need for violence. We have legislatures and courts to deal with controversies. Now, what does that say? Does it say we should be excluding and suing and legislating against Muslims? That's a very counterproductive message. And we need to really look at what people say and have conversations with them about the impact of their words. On Kiwi News last night, I saw a report, an interview with somebody who I respect greatly, who emphasized several times that these two mosques were peaceful mosques. That should not be said. It need not be said. When there was the attack in Pittsburgh and the attack in Charleston, I heard no one say this was a peaceful synagogue or this was a peaceful church. So I think where we start is where the takeaway is. We need to think more about the words we use and how those words convey negative messages and may influence people. And that starts even with the most well-intentioned people.
I couldn't agree more, sir. And this wasn't violence, it was terrorism. Thank you so much for joining us,
Absolutely.
Ambassador. Thank you for that.
Thank you for having me.